Welcome to BALLBUSTERS Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. If you'd like to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate Forum, then go to nathanoakley.com. Now, joining me on BALLBUSTERS this evening is Betty Van Velsen, Paula, otherwise known as Bible Literalist, and Quantum Eraser. Very good to have you all.
Hello. Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. So we are going to be taking apart some rather sad ball arguments that we come across, and we were discussing a little bit of this in the pre-show, so shout out to all of you in the second channel audience who've been listening to us jibber jabber about this before we started, but we've been sort of correlating our ideas and coming up with some of the best/worst globe proofs and challenges that we get set by our opposing side. So anybody want to kick off with a sort of summary of the idea that's going to be covered in today's BALLBUSTERS?
Well, just a couple warnings. There's some serious storms headed my general direction. So if it gets cut off, if it's like, hey, Quantum Eraser, where are you? You know why.
Yeah, if this show abruptly ends, you've now got the reason. Hopefully it will go off without a hitch, we shall see.
Yeah, these are some. I didn't pick typical arguments. I tried to pick their best arguments, right? I didn't want to lowball. I want to take the best that they got, and the most. Some of them are. I don't want to say recent because I've been hearing most of these for years, but they've been stressing them over the past couple months. It ebbs and flows. When we just crush, certain arguments, then the other ones flow back to the top again. It's like it's a never-ending feedback loop of retardation.
Yeah, it's like a whack-a-mole game.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. And like I said, we're going to go step by step through these. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to enjoy it.
So, Paula, you're prepped up, ready for this? Got some devastating arguments that you've been had, and then realised that they're useless?
Where do I start? There are bad arguments made on the flat earther side, though, is I think a more important issue because, and no matter what the topic is, if it's flat earth or not, people don't always make the best arguments. So I think it's a good idea to go over these sorts of things because everybody needs a refresher anyway. So nothing in particular, just that we need to be careful with our terms and make sure that we're not making the same mistakes or playing into their hand.
Absolutely. I mean, I think John's going to start off with a soundly debunking or an explanation around how that argument works. But ultimately, I think it's worth bearing in mind that most, if not all, of the arguments are overcomplicating something that's actually quite simple. So when I say the Earth is obviously and observably flat, try to bear that in mind when you're studying an argument, because sometimes it seems so much more simple than it actually is. So I don't mind actually starting off with one. Anyone mind if I formulate one for anybody? Is anybody?
No, go.
So the Southern Star rotation one, a couple of people came on the panel of the debate recently and were talking about that particular argument, i.e. why do we have star rotation in the northern and southern hemisphere? And although that's been picked apart in the complicated way, i.e. explanation of the affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy and begging the question fallacy. Now, just explaining the names of the fallacy sounds complicated to some people who might be in the audience, but ultimately speaking, it's as simple as this. You're always looking up at the stars. Doesn't matter where you travel to, you're going to look up at them. However, the idea that they are upside down from where you are, antipode, for the correct terminology, that idea is foisted upon you, but you never experience it. So you're having to visualize when you travel from the north towards the horizon and then arrive in the south. You have to imagine that you've done that journey and traversed a ball. You haven't. You've not experienced it in any way, shape or form, and at no point have you ever experienced the stars anything other than above you. So you have to visualize this idea of traveling on a ball before you make your example of the thing that happens in the sky above your head. And it's the above your head bit that's the most important bit to realise. So when somebody says, well, why do we have north and south star rotation in the northern and southern hemisphere? As soon as they use that word hemisphere, for me now, it's an alarm bell. Oh, right, so you're begging the question, making us assume we're on a sphere before we actually look at the stars or look at anything else. So it's understanding how the argument works. And in reality, it's quite simple. The stars are always up. They're always above your head. They're always in the sky, however you want to term it, relatively from your position. They're above you. And they always will be. You'll never experience stars under your arse, antipode from where you are. That's just a concept that you're told that you must put into the argument before you answer the question that they're putting forward. So there we go. That is my first undoing of a, I don't know, 2015/16, maybe even 17 argument when that was really strong, right?
Yeah, it's a 2015 argument. It was one of the first arguments I ran into that I thought it stopped me in my tracks. I mean, the big one for me was the counterclockwise and clockwise rotation. And in 2 seconds, I said, yeah, let's hold the wagons here. What is going on? That counterclockwise and clockwise, for one, are not objective directions or opposing directions. Those aren't directions, right? And I said, wait a second, let me think about this. Took about 3 seconds, and I said, I see a little parlor trick, right? Because in the north versus the south, it doesn't matter where you are, save for Polaris. All the sun, moon, and all the stars move from what? East to west, correct? So it's just a little retard parlor trick that they were trying to pull. It fooled a lot of people for a long time. You can still hear arguments today that some flat earthers out there, they just move past the argument. They don't deal with the actual tenets of the argument. I'm sitting there, why are you even out here? We're going to talk about a couple scenarios where this happens, and I'm going to give my take.
We move on to the presentation, or have you got anything to add, Paula?
Not really, not yet.
Okay, right. If I stick up your screen, we've got Google Earth presented at the moment, John.
Yeah, that's fine. Just tell me when it's up.
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah, so a few weeks ago, I was sitting around and I got a recommendation in my videos, and it had Soundly's Causeway Bridge. And they were all celebrating, you know, how the bridge is curved and this is a flat earth proof. And I said, well, wait a second. It was getting pretty late. I said, let me go ahead and pull up Google Earth and let's see if this is actually curving, right? So I said, all right, let's roll on in here, right? Because you see, they conveniently forget one of the tenets of their religion is that every point along a tangent from your feet drops. That is, vertical drops at 8 inches per mile squared. I don't know. They appear to have forgotten that or something, because all they started to do was, I was getting private messages, people just laughing. QE, you're really off the reservation now. By a whole bunch of people that I haven't heard from in a while. And I said, what the heck? And they didn't provide any argument against my argument. They were just laughing. I said, well, why don't you, well, stop laughing. Go ahead and give me your argument. And there doesn't seem to be any. And I said, and it happened a couple days this week again. They won't let it go. See, that's a tell. That's a tell that they're clueless. So I'm just going to stay here for the foreseeable future. And hopefully everyone can guess what I'm going to do here. We got the Causeway Bridge, right? This is 24 miles. So I just went to the southern part of the bridge, right? Pretty easy. Go down to the shoreline. I'm not messing with the bridge. I'm just looking at the shoreline. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to take elevations of the shoreline, right? This is pretty reasonable, isn't it? So I'm getting 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 3, 2. You're getting the idea. So then guess what my next step is going to be, right? I'm going to go to the north side of the bridge and do the same thing. Remember, every point along a tangent from your feet drops. That is, vertical drops away from you. Whoa there. At 8 inches per mile squared. So it's I'm going to just look at the elevations on both sides of the bridge, right? I think this is a well duh. So I'm over here on the shoreline. Let's get a little closer. Over here on the shoreline, I'm getting 1 foot, 2 foot, 1 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot. You're getting the idea. So the question, it begs the question, right? Why do we have the same elevations on both sides of the bridge if the bridge is curving, if we live on a curved earth? At every point along a tangent from your feet drops. That's vertical drops away from you at 8 inches per mile squared. I mean, everyone knows this. This has been going on for about 4 years now. Where's the vertical drop?
Sorry, can I give the response then? So their response or their rebuttal would be, well, it's from the distance from the centre of Earth. Or to put it more succinctly, they beg the question that Earth is a sphere.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to get to this in a second, that the elevation benchmark isn't based from the center of the Earth. Where'd they get that from? They just make it up. Or are they from MSU? Make shit up university. Right? So they live on a level curve is what they're trying to say, correct?
Essentially, yes.
Well,
they're saying it's a level curve. That's essentially their argument. Distance from the centre on a sphere, therefore curved, therefore level curve is their argument.
Right. That's that. Married bachelors make more sense. Here, let me show you something here, folks. Here, remember this, ball tarts. Let's see if you remember this. All right. Can you see this, Nathan?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, this is vertical drop, right? See, drop, drop in inches, drop in feet, drop in miles by trig construction, by Pythagoras construction, doesn't matter, sagitta. You see, this is drop, elevation. You see, there's only drop in elevation. There's not horizontal drop. So I don't know, you might have forgotten about this. So let's pretend that the north side of that Causeway Bridge is right there along the tangent. Well, guess what? It's got a drop. Vertical drop. Duh. And they're having problems with the definition of level. Let's go through it. From Merriam-Webster, level, to make a line or surface horizontal, make flat or level. Right? What's so hard about this? Synonyms: flat, flush, plane. Level, flat, plane, even, smooth means having a surface without bends or curves, right? These are level and curve are mutually exclusive. And back to your point, and Lewis Crayon Muncher, just the other day, what did he say? Just like you said, Nathan. Elevation is the distance away from the center of the Earth. Really? Well, your alma mater wiki says elevation is not to be confused with the distance from the center of the Earth. Did you even know your own model or reification fallacy? Apparently not, right? Let's go over drop, right? Drop, to fall vertically, have an abrupt descent. Drop, from Oxford dictionaries, let or make something fall vertically. Well, why do I even have to cite this? From Merriam-Webster, height, altitude, elevation means vertical distance, right? This doesn't take a rocket scientist, Baltards. Just launch pad security. You're below that. Why do I even have to go over this? I don't know. That's all for that one.
We have a couple of moments to chat. I had rumblings from Paula. Chat's going nuts, by the way. See all those tags with my name on it? Yeah, it's flat, bitches. You don't have to like it.
Yeah, I've been just spamming the chat with that it's a presupposition begging the question, of course, like Nathan said earlier, of presuming that level means parallel to the surface of a sphere. So that's the same thing with the radius, distance from the center. It's still presupposing there's a radius. So, but their curve calculators are showing you the orthographic view of a tangent line and why something should be obstructed. So they can't have it both ways. Either there's a tangent or it's parallel to the surface. And they want both and have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah, they need both because they have neither. So they need to be able to switch between the two depending on the circumstances and argument. I'll just make this point and then maybe we'll move on pretty quickly. I'll see. Every assumption of a sphere starts with an assumption of the sphere. So if you're going to lay out a sphere proof, the only way to do it is to first beg the question and assume you're on a sphere. So these guys telling us that level is a curve because it's measured from the centre of the Earth, it's just a laugh, right? I mean, I just watched all that shit scroll by and just think, yeah, that's all you guys can ever do. Beg the question. It'll never, ever change because that's all you can do if you're making up nonsense. Assume your outcome, formulate it fallaciously. That's it. That's all we see in the chat. Nice. Good to have you all, Globeheads. Great example.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And what was let me pull this up. So, are you still sharing me?
I took you down temporarily. I'll put you back up now.
Yeah, cause the scholarly comeback to this was what? Remember we talked about this, right? Is it my idiot? Yeah. Here's the scholarly comeback I got on Discord, right? Pull it a little closer. This is grown adults give this rebuttal to the argument. What were you out with your husband on a picnic or something, clown show? This is a portrait. Can anyone tell me what is wrong with his little clown show depiction right here? Don't worry about the words. It's no big deal. Right? What's the problem here?
Remember, bent bridge with him on the centre of it.
Right, exactly. Because the tangent starts at your feet. Remember, I said every point along a tangent from your feet drops away from you. So this isn't a depiction of that. If this was the tangent would go out this way straight, right? Then you have drop. Duh. But this is the level that we get here, folks. Right? I mean, it's a joke. This speaks for itself. Friggin' clowns.
Yeah, the obstruction itself is a joke. I mean, essentially they're hijacking the very model because the model is supposed to start with you on the top of the ball. Well, they need to force an obstruction, something raising up between you and your target to cause an obstruction. Well, if you're on the top of the ball, that doesn't work. You have to redraw how it looks with you tilting back at an angle because it doesn't quite look right when you draw you angled down massively when you know that you're looking out towards the horizon. But they have to fudge that fact because all they're doing is hijacking perspective, and the perspective starts from the eye of the observer. So where do they stick the clown? In the middle of the bridge.
I mean, this is juvenile.
Muppet Vision on steroids. Not only is it target and observer in orthographic view, he's in the middle of the observation. You're having a laugh, right, Globeheads? You're morons.
Yeah, that's what I was saying in my son video, like a year ago, is you guys and your curve calculators are putting the tangent on the horizon to force there to be an obstruction when the observer is the tangent point. And then they tried to say, well, you're looking down just a little, you're just not aware of it. You're the tangent, and you can do their own precious vertical, 90 degrees from the ground and go perpendicular to that is what you do when you have a spirit level, and set your camera to its absolute level. You are not looking down. And if you're where that clown is on the bridge, there's nothing on the surface where you're standing can possibly ever obstruct your view. And they just cannot accept that point.
No, they're bringing the bulge back. It's just the same old thing over and over again, right? There is no bulge, people,
Battle of
unless
the
you're looking
Bulge.
at your husband.
Sorry.
Yeah, when the bulge gets mentioned now, it's after the fact. When we were last talking about the bulge, it was on the Isle of Man debate. And the bulge is something that's in the near foreground that's risen up to obscure your view of something in the distance. Well, that's all well and good when you're in Muppet vision and talking about actual sizes of things. As soon as you start accounting for the fact that that bulge is supposed to be in the very near foreground if you're low to the ground, in the very, very near foreground, its angular size becomes enormous. So yeah, let's talk about that bulge. You know what I mean? That bulge that we never see. There's never any wall of earth obscuring your view in the distance. Clearer the day, the further you can see.
Yeah, I agree. And what's the big one? See, I keep on mentioning this 8 inches per mile squared. Did you guys forget about that? I don't know. Uh, I guess they did. No one brings it up. Where's the drop at? It's preposterous.
Yeah, if it
So
was a
let me
ball,
go.
we'd know about it pretty quickly because there'd be a drop
Yeah,
in every
exactly.
direction.
It's just it's ridiculous that it, I think they purposely forget about it from argument to argument. They can't remember what their religion says, right? So they live on a level curve. That's exactly what they do. So, all right, we ready? We haven't even started yet.
Yeah, should we move on?
Yeah. You ready to begin?
Yeah, you're on.
It's not sharing, by the way. Sorry.
No, you are now.
There you go. Okay.
All right, this is a step-by-step block of instruction demonstrating how you deconstruct ball-tard arguments and hand the spinning space monkeys their asses. I mean, these are pretty easy. Let's take the first one. This is a typical baller claim and something that's recently starting to really chap my ass. And I'm going to tell you why here in a minute. So, typical baller claim, you've all seen this, right? Why are these la la la? They put a picture of an object, boat, whatever, right? And they have a flat earther on the panel. And they ask the flat earther, why is this disappearing below the horizon? Like, have the flat earther explain, implying obstruction is curvature, right? But why are they're presenting their evidence? Why are they having somebody else explain their evidence? And that's not that irritating to me because I expect that from crayon munchers to offer that. However, the problem comes in when you get flat earthers that shouldn't be there start to bumble and fumble and stumble their way to try to explain it. Why? Hello, McFly. You see what they do? They immediately shift the burden of proof fallacy, right? And request you explain it. Well, my response, what in the world? Why would I need to? I never claimed anything whatsoever to do with your la la la, your evidence, right? It's your evidence. You validate it. Your claim, counselor, not me. I mean, you're the one making the claim. This is a little tricksy, right? But you have flat earthers stumble and bumble and fumble their way, try to explain it. They can't explain it, right? They don't know what they're doing. And this speaks to a larger point. Ask yourself a question. If you say, well, why isn't the flat earth moving forward? Let me tell you something. It's because of flat earthers. That's why. Let me lift the veil because you got pretender clown flat earthers out here want to hear their voice. They want to be heard. Listen, I got no problem. You know the earth is a sphere. You've done your due diligence and your scrutiny. You know it's not spinning, it's domed. You know all this stuff. That doesn't mean you get to come out and start challenging people, right? When you come out here and challenge these retards, you're representing me, right? You may not know it, you may not like it, but that's what you're doing by proxy. So if you shouldn't be out here and you know you shouldn't be out here because you haven't done your homework, then you need to go back and do your homework first, then come out here. Right? Does that make sense to everyone? Don't let me catch you. This is the final, because I've seen this most recently last week or this week past. It's over. Listen, if I catch you out here, I don't care who you are. If I catch you, I'm going to embarrass you. We're going to do a BALLBUSTERS show with the star being you. Okay? Let's see if that works. Because you're not cloaking anything. As soon as you open your incoherent pie hole, you're exposed. You're not cloaked. We all see you. Okay? All right, let's move on. Like I said, tell us, Crayon Muncher, and I'm talking to the ball-tards here. Do you wander around aimlessly asking complete strangers to explain your claims? I mean, who does this, right? You get a black eye. Try that at your local gas station. Personal question, are you insane? You crayon munching ballers are in dire need of some new tactics. I got an idea. Hire a preschooler. See if it passes that test first. Number two, like I said, it's you observe and declare. Your observe and declare explanation. We're going to need you to validate it, right? Not just observe and give your just so story. Any idiot can do that. You now have to validate it. So guess what? How we're going to validate it? Well, it's an implied cause and effect relationship. Obstruction is causing, or curvature is causing obstruction, right? That's what you're implying here with your no evidence showing your picture. Well, you're directly implying a cause and effect relationship. You know, your like I said, is obstruction due to curvature. So there's a method that adjudicates and validates natural cause and effect relationships. It's called the scientific method. Heard of it? D, A, B, C, and D above. These guys, you have to answer these questions to validate it. If you don't validate it, I'm not giving any explanation. I'm just going to sit there and laugh at you. And if you don't, from the University of Rochester Physics Labs, common mistakes in applying the scientific method. The most fundamental error is to make the mistake to mistake the hypothesis for an explanation of a phenomena without performing experimental tests. You clowns don't even have a friggin' hypothesis. You don't have anything. You're asking other people. All you have is your picture with your crayon munching religious spin attached. Well, that's just a just so story. That's why you immediately shift the burden of proof fallacy. So like I said, there's no problem with you doing it. I expect you guys to do this. It's with the flat earthers. So flat earthers, take your head out of your fourth point of contact and set these retards straight right from the outset. If you don't, I'm going to find you. I am. I'm going to make it my mission to peruse these friggin' ball-tard debates. I'm going to find you because they're not going to stop doing it because they have you. You have the dog wagging the tail here. They're not going to stop doing it as long as you keep letting them. Number three, this is really hilarious. I'm going to drop anchor right here for a while. I've been hearing this. This is like 2015 arguments, right? And you still get flat earthers. I had seasoned flat earthers be challenged with this. Like, if it's not curvature that's causing this obstruction or bottom-up obstruction, then what could it be? Right? These tards don't even know their own model. It's called atmospheric refraction from your alma mater. Atmospheric refraction near the ground produces mirages. Such refraction can also raise or lower, stretch or shorten the images of distant objects without involving mirages. So they got a little link in here, little wiki link with their raise and lower, right? So you click on that, guess where it takes you, right? It takes you to sinking because lowering is sinking. Listen to this closely. Sinking is the opposite of looming. In sinking, objects that are normally seen above the horizon appear to be less elevated or may even disappear below the horizon. You clowns, It's in your own model. Less elevated, right? What do you think's going to happen here? Is the object going to be less elevated from the top down? Crayon munchers. And it's disappearing below the horizon. Just by refraction. Did you see any curvature in here? I didn't see any. I'm just going to stay. See how stupid this is? They don't even know it. This was solved in 2015. All right. Any comments on this one?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is, in essence, when you say you see any curvature in here, what you mean is, do you see the R value applicable when they're describing sinking or looming? No. But what's applicable when they apply terrestrial refraction to the Earth curve calculator? Oh, well, it's a 7/6 R value. So, sod all to do with actual atmospheric conditions and everything to do with begging the question of Earth being a sphere and then applying some mathematics to it. So, they don't actually use refraction. They use a very specific thing called terrestrial refraction. 7/6 of the begging the question fallacy, R value.
Exactly. That's what they do. It's part of their equations. You can't calculate this. And then I hear people, they're looking at this object, a video or a picture, and they say, there's no refraction there. Ball tarts. I don't see any refraction. I don't know. Do you have a refraction meter, like a calibrated refraction meter in your skull, ball tarts? I'd like to see that. Can I get the calibration certificate? Clowns.
Paula? Brad? I've got a few other
Not
points.
much to add. I mean, optics can be pretty complicated. I mean, a lot of people don't realize how many lenses are in even the simplest telescope or camera. And the angles of the light can be calculated, but those are controlled refractions in those lenses. But the atmosphere is a continually changing lens or set of lenses. And that's why you get all these phenomena, because optics is complicated, especially when it comes to the atmosphere and heat rising and all sorts of things that contribute to lensing. There's just so many variables to say, well, why is it only disappearing from the bottom up? And then you show them their own science, their own claims, and they still don't believe it because it doesn't fit the narrative that it must be only bottom up because refraction on the ground, or not refraction, but obstruction on the ground from curvature that they've already presumed. So around and around we go.
Yeah, we don't even have to bring in any of the optics that are happening. It's in your own model. So why are you asking us? Right? I don't get it. Don't you know your own reification fallacy model? By now, it's been 4 years. These were seasoned veterans, not newbie baltards. These were seasoned veteran baltards, challenging veteran flat earthers. And of course, the veteran flat earthers, they should be picking up cans alongside of the road too. They agreed. In fact, they agreed that there shouldn't be. I couldn't believe it when it's in their own model. Unbelievable.
Is there going to be other points in this presentation that you talk about the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator? Because if not, I'd like to talk about this a bit more if that's good by you.
Yeah, I want you to talk about it, especially the one with the bricks. That's the one I was looking for. So I think I'm done with the curve calculator for now. I'll have to check.
Well, fine. I'll do my example verbally, and then hopefully we'll talk about it a little bit more, because it's a pet peeve of mine. Now it's in a situation where we're talking about it with utter disdain. I'm happy to talk about it, but typically when it gets brought up on the show, the bottom line is you're begging the question. You're automatically assuming your outcome. There's an R value in there. So when we're doing the show, we'll say in R you trust and various other things. The value of R is a total assumption. They assume the value based on the trajectory of the sun. That's where they get the value. They assume a spherical radius. So there's nothing but assumptions. It's just begging the question. So it proves absolutely nothing. But the argument will always be, when using said begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator, that the obstruction, regardless of what's actually causing it, is only ever asserted to be caused by one thing: Earth curve. So if something disappears in the distance, it's Earth curve that's causing it. It doesn't matter what the effect you're observing or how blurry it is, it's Earth curve that's causing that. Well, it's clearly a mirage. No, Earth curve, let's run the maths on it. So the only ever outcome is going to be an Earth curve obstruction. Now, there's been a few people in recent times that have listed all the things that we as flat earthers have come across that can explain things disappearing from the bottom up. And there's a whole list of them. But one, the most important, the hijacking aspect of the calculator, is perspective. Things get smaller with distance. Now, it gets a bit more complicated at the limits of view because things are very small. And even when you zoom in on them, they might get bigger temporarily, but there's also a diffraction limit for larger cameras. So things eventually get too small to see. That is a fact that most people can reconcile without too much trouble. Things get further away, eventually they get too small to see. The example I give to make this a bit more visually easy to digest is a brick. So you put a brick at 100 yards and you look at it, it's a brick. You then push it out to a mile. Let's say the brick is about 8 inches, and at a mile, its angular size becomes too small to see. You can't see a single brick at a mile. However, if you build on top of it 200 further bricks, the 200 further bricks that you put on top of it have a larger angular size and can be seen, but it makes absolutely no difference to the brick at the bottom, which still has exactly the same angular size as when you first laid it down. Now, the net result is you have bottom-up obstruction of that pile of 200 bricks to the tune of one brick, 8 inches. So what do you know? We've got 8 inches at a mile disappearing due to its angular size. Something that's completely ignored in the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator. And the way they do it is to keep the size consistent. So it's an 8-inch brick, and it'll be 8 inches if it's at 5 miles. And if you draw it side on, with the side of your own head in the observation drawing, and the brick on the right hand side of the page, you can draw a straight line between target and observer. And according to their mathematics, which exclude all aspects of perspective, you're left with a situation where you can see a brick that's 8 inches high at 800,000 miles. It doesn't matter how far away it is, you just draw a longer line. In reality, the angle to that brick gets smaller and smaller as it gets further and further away. Well, they would allege that the cause of it disappearing from bottom up isn't because the angle at the bottom is the smallest. Oh no, of course, it's only ever one assertion: Earth curve. Well, we as flat earthers should laugh. Well, there's multiple reasons why things can disappear from bottom up, not least to say the atmospheric conditions on the day, which are not taken into account by your curve calculator. You have terrestrial refraction, 7/6 of the begging the question R value. So you don't have any of these accountable effects taken into consideration. If you did, the sinking would also be taken into account. But what will that be called? Oh, Earth curve. Of course, there's only a one cause calculator in play here. So your one cause calculator tells you that Earth curve has obstructed something, even though it's patently obvious to everybody who has ever used a set of eyeballs that things get too small to see if they get too far away. That is the cause of things disappearing in the distance, and there is absolutely no account of it in the Earth curve calculator. Just to round out this one step into a begging the question fallacy, the point that never gets raised on our debate is never covered because the R value is the main issue. As soon as you're into using that calculator, and this is where I will sidestep into a different subject, you're into begging the question. They've won. They've already got you to beg the question. You're already assuming you're on a sphere the second you start plugging numbers through that calculator. And that's just what they want. They want us to argue all day long about how much Earth curve should or shouldn't be obstructing something. So you've lost the second you use that calculator. That's the bottom line. And the same applies to other flat earthers who at this stage of the game should be moving on and progressing their arguments, and instead allow the competition to force them to beg the question, which is what John was covering earlier. When John says he's going to jump all over flat earthers who do this, I'm totally behind him, because, and I've done it. I'll give an example. I'm sorry to hang him out to dry, but Spurs Chemo came on and was discussing some of his antics out on Romper Room, and he was explaining that he was arguing the toss about whether or not the lunar rover wheels would kick up dust. It's like, what? That plays right into their hands. So we're arguing about the rock. Oh, it's a rock now, is it? In the sky, falling around a sphere Earth. That's what we're talking about. And them travelling to that rock in the sky, falling around a sphere Earth. And whether or not the dust on that rock would be kicked up. It's like, why is it a rock? Why is it falling around the Earth? Why do we suddenly know what this thing is? Why is it proposed that you can even get there in the first instance through a violation of a natural law, the vacuum of the sky? Well, you can't do any of those things. All of these arguments shouldn't even be happening. You know, the assertion that you can travel in a sky vacuum is absolutely preposterous. The assertion that we have a sky vacuum is where that argument ends. You don't need to debate about whether or not tyres are kicking up dust on the moon as a flat earther. You should be saying the sky cannot be a vacuum. And that story that takes place in Narnia about a moon buggy travelling across the snow. I mean, I always get those two confused. The moon buggy travelling across a alien surface that we've never visited before. That whole narrative takes place in a medium that cannot exist. So we should be cutting the legs off these arguments. Space is fake. It's very easy to debunk. You can't have gas pressure, we breathe it, next to a vacuum. Well, according to that narrative where those moon buggies are kicking up dust on a rock in the sky vacuum, it's in a sky vacuum. Don't need to have those arguments, and we should be a bit further along than talking about NASA. But there we go. That's my ham-handed segue away from the curve calculator, John. Hopefully the next subject is even vaguely loosely related. Probably not.
No. I have a challenge. Nathan, why should you expect the curve calculator to account for perspective?
Because every man, woman, child, or animal that's generally land-based has eyeballs that see perspective. It is a factor every single time you look through a camera, film something with a camcorder, or look at anything ever. Perspective is a factor. When you take a picture, you absolutely, without fail, will capture a perspective view. What you absolutely will never capture is the way the mathematics in the curve calculator works. So their calculations are based on seeing the side of your own head rather than a perspective view. So the question shouldn't be, why should the calculator include perspective? It's, why the hell has it stolen perspective and calling it Earth curvature?
That question's been asked many times. I was sitting there dumbfounded. You don't play with your Earth curve calculators in a vacuum, no pun intended. You compare the Earth curve calculations to what?
Photographs.
Photographs, people. I don't know. Are they mainlining fluoride? Whoever asked those questions, you need to take a serious look. You need to hire a new staff of slobber nurses. I mean, this is daft, Muppet. I don't know, man. I don't get it.
We're segueing away, but is there anything else you want to add, Paul? I know you have a lot of insight with the curve calculator. I've seen you do enough stuff with it.
Yeah, I think what you were describing, we could all use the umbrella term, the Narnia gambit, because it's a gambit. It's a lure into getting you completely off the trail and on their turf, where they basically, it's like having a cat chase a laser dot, and that's how they entertain themselves, is making you do all their own homework. And what you were both saying earlier about the bottom up disappearance is going to flow right into this thing about Polaris, because that's their other thing, is why can't we see Polaris from the south? And it's the same. We're still looking at stuff far away, and they are trying to presume, though, that it's so far away that being on one side or the other of the sphere wouldn't make that much of a difference. That you should, they're kind of mixing the environment again. They're saying, well, on a sphere, on a flat plane, we should be able to see that. No, by your own science, your definitions, you should not. You should, if you were in the north, but not in the south because it's too far away. And it's not that big, and it's just a smaller diameter, which again, they're like, well, we can triangulate the position of these things. No, you can't. You have too many variables. You don't, or unknowns. You don't know. If you know the size, you can know the distance. And if you know the distance, you can know the size. But if you don't know either of those, you can't do anything but say there's a light in the sky. And whether you can see it or not depends, just like if you put a flashlight on the ground and walk away, you're still not going to see it no matter how hard you try, not because there's curve in the way, but because it's small and the angular resolution is going to make it disappear, or it's just going to be that it's just too low to the ground, and you wouldn't expect to see it even if it was just 10 feet away, depending on how big the light is, which you have to know in the first place anyway. So it goes around circular reasoning and this Narnia gambit, where we have to presume everything that they want us to, and they can jump from one room in Narnia to the next and without anybody noticing half the time. That's the sad part. But yeah, this next part about Polaris is the same problem.
All right, are we ready to move on? Screen up?
I think so. I want me to pop you back on. Right, you're up.
All right, now it goes without saying, the first proof, there's no science in this, folks. We're not talking about any scientific evidence here. This is you can't get any farther away from science. So I just want to let you know that. So the angle to Polaris, it's like baller Tourette's now with this one. This one has popped up. I heard this from the beginning too, but now it's gaining more traction. So let's take a look at this disheveled monkey. So the angle to Polaris changes 1 degree every 69 miles south you go from geographic north, from the geographic North Pole. So like I said, this isn't a scientific inquiry or proof. For brevity, angles are not natural phenomenon. Number 2, the measurement is based and taken from the horizon. The horizon is only apparent, clown shows, meaning not actually. Number 3, latitude and longitude lines aren't frigging real. They're imaginary and are based on a sphere, see Eratosthenes train wreck. So it's begging the question fallacy, and then it ramps up. Overall, the entire fiasco is an affirmative consequent formological fallacy, right? If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. If the spherical Earth with a radius of la is true, P, we will observe differing elevation angles to Polaris as a function of distance from the North Pole, Q. We observe differing elevation angles from the North Pole, Q. Therefore, the Earth is a sphere, therefore P. Prove the spherical Earth first, crayon munchers. My word. P.S. Can you please actually support your claim? Okay, see if you can follow this, right? If you're going to make this claim, Baltards, A, you need to show the sextant and the calibration certificate. B, we need to see a baller stand on the geographic North Pole and show us Polaris 90 degrees above their head. C, then at least 5 other points with a multiple of 69 miles from the geographic North Pole and the degree measurement. One of those 5 must be based on the equator, and I want the measurement. You need to measure that thing from geographic North Pole, 69 miles, down to where you think the equator is. Not just pop up on I'm on the equator. No. GPS coordinates, the whole 9 yards. You need to support your claim. D, none of your images or graphics or any of your harebrained crop trap models, little popsicle stick models, will be accepted here. PS number 2, as Polaris gets closer to the not actual horizon, its position is also apparent due to celestial refraction. Is that going to cause any problems, you think? Idiots. Oh, and validate that Polaris is 323 light years away, right? By the way, the previous estimate in the 90s from some European satellite was 434 light years. So the new thing is 323 light years. Guess how far that is? Guess how much air? 643 trillion miles. Can people grasp this? How many seconds, how many trillions of, how many years do you have that will equal 1 trillion seconds? How many years do you think? Any panel members?
I don't know. You'll have to just put us out of misery.
Paula, you have any idea?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm guessing it's a bunch.
30,000 years for 1 trillion seconds. This is utter farcic. It's farcical, right? I don't know what it'll be next week. PS number 3, Polaris isn't 90 degrees above the magnetic North Pole either, you baltards. They don't know the difference between magnetic north, geographic north, that is true north, grid north, or celestial north. We had a bunch of people come on the show. They didn't know this. They thought it was above the magnetic north, right? This is farcical. Number 4, attempting to discern the shape of what you're standing on by looking to the heavens is tantamount to trying to ascertain the shape of Cassiopeia by looking at a mud bog. Yeah, utter morons. In conclusion, what we got here is known in the industry as a convoluted gaggle screw, peddled and parroted by no-depth wiki Discovery Channel parroting pretender clown Muppets that couldn't discern the difference between their asses and a pipe wrench. All right, comments, questions?
Yeah, this is kind of one of those things that you need it to be understood that when people present a graphic of something, that doesn't mean that their point has been proven. But they'll do it all the time. I get cartoons on, I can't remember whose channel it was now, Snack to the Future or something along those lines. I can't remember, it doesn't matter. Somebody put a cartoon of somebody sat on a flat earth map and it was 2 for 1 in this regard. So how do you explain this observation of, and then he detailed something that he claimed was happening with the stars, and he's got a cartoon graphic of people sitting on continents with a load of word salad of what he claims happens. You're like, well, show me that then. What do you mean? Well, show me that actually being the case. Show me the observations that prove that to be so. And, of course, there's absolutely nothing but silence as a response to it.
Precisely. Hold their feet to the fire, flat earthers. They make that claim. We don't need any models. We need to see it in reality. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and the next thing they do after that is to say, well, the only way people can navigate is by, GPS, what they define it as, compasses and that sort of thing. And everybody had to know it was a ball in order to do that for thousands of years. And a couple of days ago, I just watched a documentary. These people who live in the Sahara Desert, which is basically the size of the U.S., and they cross it every year without even a compass. They just go by the wind and the sun, and they know their terrain, and they know when to cross. They know where their stop point oases are. They know they don't get lost. And they do this without so much as a compass. So the claim after you push them off of this point about Polaris is that, somehow you wouldn't be able to navigate unless you had this model, which is preposterous because even people today navigate without this model. They don't have any tech at all, and they do just fine. They do better at navigating than we do most of the time with our GPSs. So that doesn't follow either.
Well, they claim that all of these ancients did this, right? Well, go ahead and start posting them. I need to see the actual distances that these ships, what's the start point and the end point, and how they got there. Don't forget about the billions of them that crashed and sank, right? Don't forget about those. I need to see this. I mean, they just parrot this. They get it from Wiki. They just parrot ambiguity, right? And think that's like a claim. right? You're a joke. So
Right.
I'm going to hold your feet to the fire if
At
you
the
bring
beginning,
up any of these claims, right? And you're going to have to provide support for them.
I'm stepping all over you. I'm sorry. I was just going to say this does kind of link back to the calculator in the respect that when we're detailing angular size of the bottom of a brick, it's like you're talking to people that have got the people that we're talking to, their eyes glaze over, metaphorically speaking. Like, what do you mean angular size? Why would we ever include that? As soon as you're talking about the sky, suddenly the not actual size, the angular size, the apparent size is all they want to talk about. And suddenly the not actual size, the apparent size, the angular size of the sun and what it does suddenly proves something. And I can never get this right, John. Can you do it for me? Why does the not... You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, don't ruin it, man. We're going there next.
Oh, is that next? Oh, I'm stealing your thunder then. But, well, as a preamble to this then, what we're now talking about is not actual sizes, feet and inches, like they plug in the curve calculator, actual sizes that do not change with distance. We're now talking about not actual sizes, angular sizes, sizes that do change with distance. So they're not useful because, comparably speaking, an angular size of something in the distance can be much smaller than the angular size of something in the foreground, even though the thing in the foreground could be much, much bigger. That's how perspective works. Now, like I say, this will fall on very deaf ears when you're talking to globeheads, even though that they will absolutely detail things in actual sizes in the calculator and angular sizes when they're talking about what the sun should or should not be doing. I'm just going to do a couple of shout outs, John. There's been quite a few people who've smashed the super chat, so I'll just say a quick thank you to Henrik7. Thank you very much indeed for hitting the super chat. Also, Leonardo Gonzalez, thank you very much indeed to you. Really do appreciate your support. Thank you very much indeed. And then there's been a couple, I think, Clearly also. Thank you very much indeed for hitting the super chat. Really do appreciate all of your support. Right, this is my favourite bit, John. Shall I bring your screen back up?
Yeah. Yep. Tell me when it's up.
Yeah. Here we go.
All right. You know, one of the most popular arguments, and this has been going on for a while too, the sun doesn't change angular size throughout the day. Right? Everyone's heard this. So, A, angular size means apparent size. Apparent in our context means not actual or not actually. According to your fairy tale narrative, the sun's position is also apparent. So the retard's query should actually be, why does the not actual size of the sun not decrease its not actual size as it moves from its not actual position? That's your query, baltards. You don't even know it. I love it when you guys bring this proof up to me, right? I have the flamethrower ready, brother. Do you want to comment on this before I finish it up? I'll go ahead and finish it up. This is a joke. So it's not only that, it's not only this is your question, which is a tear-jerking belly laugher. It's a false equivalence fallacy, right? Is there a difference between terrestrial observations and celestial observations when considering angular, that is apparent, not real size and position, by the way? So we got another one. This entire fiasco is an affirmative consequent formological fallacy. Here it is again. If P then Q, Q therefore P. If the sun is 93 million miles away or a great distance, let me just stop right here. Nowadays, I'm getting them. It's hard to even get them to commit to this is what their actual claim is. I'm sitting there, wait a second. You're saying that it's a great distance? Are you saying it's 93 million miles away? Yeah, they're trying to distance themselves away from their friggin' fairy tale narrative, which is it's train wreck. So let me start over. If the sun is 93 million miles away from the Earth, P, then the angular size of the sun will remain the same throughout the day, Q. We observe the angular size of the sun remaining the same, Q. Therefore, the sun is 93 million miles away, therefore P. Just another fallacy. Nothing to see here, clowns. Stop clumsily circle jerking us around with your mindlessly parroted second grade playground fallacy fantasies and prove the sun is 93 million miles away first. Daft Muppets. Oh, P.S. You can YouTube this. does the sun change size? This is done by Chris Van Maitre with a solar filter. The apparent sun does change size throughout the day and year. So check that out. I think it was 2016. You put that. Just type it in; it'll pull up, or jump on his channel. Okay. Any questions, comments?
Well, big shout out to Chris Van Maitre, and yeah, absolutely. It's another one where double check what they're actually claiming when they make these assertions, because they say that it doesn't change its not actual size as it moves to its not actual position throughout the day. However, as you say, you can actually double check it and find that's not necessarily the case. So understanding how it doesn't prove anything is the first and foremost in this regard. Yes, you've just eloquently unpicked it. Well done, John. However, the first instance rightly said, prove it's 93 million miles away first, would you? What's that you say? It requires us to assume we're on a sphere. Oh, that's not all. We have to assume that one of the lights in the sky is also a sphere. What's that you say? We have to assume the radius value of the two are the same. Well, that's a lot of assumptions.
This is a romper room joke. Preschoolers would roll their eyes at these things, man. That's how bad this is.
I'll just unpack that though. So the assumption being that the Earth is a sphere with a given radius value. The second assumption being that Venus is the same size spherical rock in a vacuum as Earth, and it has the same spherical rock value of radius. So once you do that, you can then apply Kepler's third law. Is that right? Interplanetary motion, and then you get the mathematics for all the distances. So that's how you come to your distance being 93 million miles. Well, it requires you assume the Earth's a sphere, that it's got a radius value, and that radius value also applies to another light in the sky they call Venus. Well, isn't that a lot of assumptions?
Nah, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's a lot wrong with that. Hey, I shouldn't be telling you that we don't need the sarcasm. It's an outrage. You know, they're looking up at the sky, telling you that you've got those lights antipode from yourself back to the, you know, celestial bodies that they claim in the different hemispheres. Alarm bells, ding, 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 making you beg the question of being on a sphere. But they're telling you that those lights are underneath your own arse and astronomical distances away, based on an assumption that you've got a sphere to be standing on in the first place, and that there's a sky vacuum, and that another light in the sky above you is going to travel under your own arse, and it's also a rock like you, spherical, and has the same value. You're like, what an absolute bloody outrage. No, no. And then you're going to tell me that based on all of that nonsense, that's the first step. That's step one to get to this argument from the Globers. That's step one. Once you've done all that complete and utter nonsense, then you say, based on that assumption, the not actual size of the sun that we observe won't change its not actual size as it moves its not actual position through the sky. Well, wowee, that's just incredible. I've begged the question twice. Assume the light in the sky is the same as us being assumed to be a sphere, and then I'm going to say that the not actual size of it moving from its not actual position proves what now? You know, when you dilute it that much, you can see what utter horse crap this example is. You know, it makes my blood boil when people bring it up. I know you like it. I had someone in the chat comments the other day, or today, on the re-up of the Uncut and After show. I can't remember the debate number, 83 something. And there's someone in the chat comments using that exact argument, and I obliterated it in the same way as you've just done. And he wanted to move on to eclipses. And you're like, oh, right. So because I haven't gone through the nonsense of how you've got to the assumption that's using eclipses in Kepler's third law, after assuming the Earth's a sphere and Venus is also a sphere with the same radius of Earth. Get that in one breath. It's all these disclaimers that you have to put in when you actually know the nonsense. It's unreal. But yeah, there we go.
Well, the real knee slapper is, I mean, besides the train wreck, is that they think they're clever. Right? When they put these arguments out, I'm sitting there, you're just parroting this from somebody else that didn't do any due diligence either. I mean, this wasn't hard to take this apart. I mean, I don't know. It's stupefying.
Let's see if we've got Betty back. I know she's been just going to explain what Betty's been doing in case we get silence at this point. So we've had a Discord issue just before the show started, and hopefully she's been beavering away to get it working. If not, I've got a Hangout set up as an emergency backup, which is linked in the info box. But are you there, Betty? Have you given up on Discord? There's total silence. That's a sign. How you doing, Paula?
I'm still here. Yeah, I was just thinking how it's that same principle across the board of people assuming that if they can imagine a way to explain something, then that must be true. It must be actual. Their imaginary scenario, their model, works for them in their mind, therefore it must be true. And aside from that, what they do with the angular size of the sun argument is they try to compare it to a jet going across the sky. You know, the jet is smaller, and then it's bigger when it's close to you, and then it's smaller again when it goes away. Well, the problem is we know the size of the jet, and it's closer, so you have to account for a much bigger angular, if you go from your eyeball or camera or whatever out to the sun, even on anybody's model, quote unquote, the sun is way farther away than the jet and up a lot higher. So apples to oranges. Either way, they do that.
I'm going to give a big shout out to DITRH. So over the last 3 years, maybe even longer, he's been fiddling and modeling and trying to replicate and photographing and getting drone footage and you name it with the sun and the sunsets. And after looking at it for a long time, I remember having a conversation with him and he was describing it to me, what it does. And it's in essence a burden of proof reversal fallacy that he's doing any of this in the first instance. But that's part of the wonder of being a flat earther. So big shout out to DITRH. But the way he explained it to me was to say that it's basically a really like a dance. So there's all sorts of different things that are involved in the sun moving its not actual size, from its not actual position, sorry. And obviously if you've got an increase in atmospheric conditions as the sun's getting further away, it's going to slightly magnify the sun. And as it comes over your head and potentially coming closer to you. In other words, he's got his own explanation based on what he's observed. Now there's no way of validating that, but what I'm saying is that there are multiple factors to take into consideration, and you've only got to go out and look to experience the wonder of how what is happening above your head is actually taking place in the first instance. Yes, you might not be able to give an explanation that stacks up to scrutiny, but you can still get a vague idea of what's actually occurring just by looking at it. But that, for me, it captures what Dearth is doing. It captures the essence of flat Earth. It's not about the people. It's not about the world we dwell atop. Yeah, it's flat. I'm at one with that. And, it doesn't really change a great deal about your day-to-day existence because you've always been on a flat plane to begin with. The Earth hasn't suddenly unfolded. So what does it actually change in your life? Well, it makes the world very wondrous. And Dearth is a perfect example of that. He's going out and he's actually having a look at it. He's experiencing the world that's around him and, taking his time to take it in. And that is what it's all about for me. He's never going to explain what the sun is, but he now knows how he experiences that which we call the sun. And, I've done the same thing myself pre-flat Earth. I like life and like experiencing the world around me. Maybe it was one of the reasons it was so much easier to come to this subject with open arms. But for a lot of the people around me, I see them doing things that I had done. I had taken in, looked up. For a start, the amount of people who don't look up, they're looking down, they're looking at their phones all the time. You're not looking up, you're not going out and experiencing the stars. And people go, oh, I haven't got a telescope. It's like, you don't need one. Just go outside and literally crook your head slightly. That's all you need. Even with a telescope, more often than not, I'd go out without one if I wanted to look at the stars. But, these are what we're talking about. We're talking about celestial bodies and what they do. Now, do we have a definitive explanation? No. Do we need one? No. Do we need to have a model of them? No. Have they been tracked for a very long time and their cyclical motion noted? Yes. Can that be utilised by pretender clowns who assert we're on a sphere to tie into and affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy? Yes. Does that mean anything? No. Does it mean that it's still absolutely glorious? Yeah. So, if nothing else, even if you're not involved in the arguments and you don't need to take apart the formal logical fallacies, take in your world. Globe heads too. Look at it. Just go out and have a look at what the world is actually doing around you. And it is amazing. And yeah, the explanations given to us, which are set in stone, can be attacked, destroyed, and ripped apart based on their nonsense. What does the not actual size of the sun do as it changes its not actual position? Well, I'm not actually that interested.
Exactly. Very well said.
We move on? Any more for anyone?
By the way, Betty said that Discord was a no-go, just to let you know.
Is she going to come back? Should I be asking her for opinions? Is she giving up on it, I mean? Do you know? If not, we'll move on.
Yeah, let's just move on.
Okay, hopefully we'll hear from Betty. Hopefully she's not lost in the ether of Discord. Go ahead, Drew.
All right, let me know when it's up.
Yeah, you're on.
All right, this argument, I know everyone's heard this one. It's making a comeback. So the RPMs versus speed. Now, this is dedicated to Mr. Natural Experiment Bird Humping Gem Panda. He's got a serious issue with this. Number one, you don't measure the speed or rate by angular velocity, crayon munchers, i.e. revolutions. Next block of instruction, how to say the on Tuesdays. It's all in the units of measure. Speed equals distance per unit time. That's mile per hour or kilometers per hour. Angular velocity equals revolutions per unit time. RPS, RPM, RPD, day, week, month, year. You get it. Distance equals revolutions like gazelle equals hubcap. Just a clumsy, daft, muppet false equivocation or false equivalence fallacy. Like I said, RPMs are utterly irrelevant, meaningless, red herring fallacy to the discussion. We're talking about tangential speed. You don't measure speed or rate by revolutions. All points on a rotating sphere have the same angular velocity. However, those same points don't have the same rate or speed, i.e. tangential speed. It's tantamount to exclaiming to Dale Earnhardt Jr. on a 50-mile track, "Why was your car smashed to smithereens, Dale? You were only doing one revolution every 25 minutes. Clowns. When they report the speed or rate of the cars racing around the Brickyard 400, do they report it in RPMs? How about drag races, the quarter mile? Since there are no revolutions, then according to the bald-tard crayon munching logic, the dragster's speed or rate has to be 0. And when a cop pulls you over for speeding, does he tell you how many RPMs you were going over the RPM limit? To call this juvenile mind-numbing absurdity is actually insulting to real juvenile mind-numbing absurdities. That's a quick one on that. Questions, comments?
I don't have a great deal on this. It seems fairly self-explanatory. Paula?
Yeah, same here. I mean, a record player, all sorts of things you could look at, skaters, doing the line that goes around and the person in the center is not moving hardly at all, just turning on their own axis, wherever the skater on the end has to really skate fast to keep up with the line. It seems so self-evident. It's just, that's why we're like not wanting to answer questions like that.
You'd think this is self-evident, well-apodictic, right? You'd think that. No. Don't you sell the ball-tard short. Someone hold their beer. So,
Cool.
Next one?
Yep.
All right. One of our favorites, the Foucault pendulum. So, from plusmass.org, let's read this closely. Listen carefully, folks. Once you set one in motion, its direction of swing will rotate at a rate of about 0.2 degrees every minute. But in fact, it isn't really the pendulum that's rotating. The pendulum is swinging back and forth in exactly the same direction. It's the Earth which is rotating underneath the pendulum, which makes it appear that the pendulum is in fact changing direction. What does this sound like? Huh? It sounds like the Coriolis effect, doesn't it? Of course, they don't know what the Coriolis effect is. None of those clowns know.
Sorry to
Number
interrupt.
one.
Sorry to
Go
interrupt.
ahead.
This is the Coriolis effect on Earth. I just want to make it clear. There is a Coriolis effect. What John's just described, based on what the Foucault pendulum asserts, is Coriolis effect. So when he asked a rhetorical question, does this sound like... No, this is Earth-based Coriolis effect. Just to make that absolutely clear.
Could I just make one quick little point?
Oh, sorry,
Sure.
John. I've started.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
What is the Foucault pendulum hanging from that is detached from the Earth rotating beneath it?
It's a train wreck, Paula. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Right? So, are we ready to continue?
Yeah, yeah, but I agree, Paula. The nonsense that comes to the assertion, it leaves me stuttering because it's such utter nonsense. However, the assertion is that the pendulum swings back and forth in a straight line, and because the Earth turns underneath, you get a deviation, apparent deflection. So, yeah, it's a total and utter train wreck, but it's the assertion that they're making at the end of their train wreck that we're kind of focused on. But your point's totally valid. Sorry to draw that out, John.
Yeah, no problem. The squall line's just getting closer and closer. Anything else?
No, sorry.
No problem, man. Yeah, it had to be stressed here. So, taking this definition into account, right? No problems with that definition. That's what it is. If this is true, then why couldn't we just hover in a helicopter in North Carolina for 3 hours and catch a Dodger game? Freaking clowns. Number two, if the Foucault pendulum is legit, which denotes two separate reference frames, then get a load of this, baltards. Then a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles nonstop, traveling at 500 miles per hour airspeed with both locations roughly the 35th degree north latitude, that is, both allegedly spinning, both locations here, both allegedly spinning at 860 miles per hour, should be approximately 1.5 hours. But what is it actually? 4.5 hours. The Charlotte to Los Angeles flight, airspeed's 500 miles an hour. The ground speed, 500 miles per hour, plus you have to add the speed of the rotation of the Earth coming to your face. That's 1,360 miles an hour. The distance between Charlotte, North Carolina and Los Angeles is about 2,115 miles. The flight time must be approximately 1.5 hours. Has to be. But the actual flight time is 4.5 hours. Does this 1.5 hours flight time ever happen? No? Then say bye-bye now to the spinning space monkey religion. Questions, comments?
I just had one more on the Foucault pendulum.
Sure.
Its motion, its movement, is in the XY coordinate. It's two-dimensional. So exactly how is the Earth spinning? Is it spinning like a clock? You know, how can it measure, if it's sitting on the surface, how can it measure just by going clockwise or counterclockwise a motion that is neither one?
Absolutely. Arwen made the same point about the gyroscope.
Right. Same thing.
That was something I was going to add. So before going on BALLBUSTERS a couple of months ago, the assertion that was being debunked was the scientific evidence claimed to be the optical gyro. And while I was figuring out what to say on that show, I contacted John, and John suggested that I give the example of the Coriolis effect on Earth with the pendulum to start off with. In other words, you explain that the pendulum, any pendulum is just swinging back and forth, straight line, back and forth. Once you can get that concept into people's head, in other words, how it's being asserted, because if you've seen a Foucault pendulum, in a shopping mall. I haven't actually, but nevertheless, I've seen plenty of videos of them. They're knocking down dominoes, or what look like dominoes, as the apparent deflection of the Earth turning underneath causes the deviation in that normally back and forth motion. So you're seeing the apparent deflection and the Earth turning underneath. It's a really quick way to get somebody who's trying to debunk the explanation of a Coriolis effect to visualize what's actually being detailed. Now, when I've come up against this in debate, they squirm like hell when you try and tie them down to what the actual claim is. They want to keep it vague, so they can double speak back and forth between 1 and 2 reference frames. So I'll hopefully keep this concise in my own explanation. Probably not. It'll get lost in double speak if I'm not careful, but I'll try my best. So the assertion, the most important point in this regard, is that the Earth turns underneath. Now, the only people who do get away with asserting it overtly are the high priests of pseudoscience, Neil deGrasse Tyson being one of them. So he would assert via a social media platform called Twitter that a field goal has been made because the ball travels in a straight line and the Earth rotates underneath, meaning that the field goal was made by virtue of the Earth turning underneath. So that then establishes firmly what we are talking about when we talk about Earth-based Coriolis effect. So hopefully this is where it doesn't get lost in explanation. The Coriolis effect, to be as succinct as I can, is a roundabout with you on it holding a ball, and the roundabout becomes a single reference frame, a non-inertial reference frame. And when you throw the ball into the inertial reference frame, it travels like the field goal ball in a straight line. However, because you continue to rotate underneath that ball, travelling in a straight line, it appears to take a curved path. Now that is known as an apparent deflection. So the field goal was made because the ball travelled in a straight line, but the Earth rotated underneath. So that is in essence the Coriolis effect. Coriolis effect is real, but Earth-based Coriolis effect is absolutely not real. The way you know is when the globeheads argue that they only have a single reference frame. So the globeheads who are involved in debates do not assert, as Neil deGrasse Tyson does, that the Earth rotates underneath, precisely what they're trying to prove. Instead, they argue that the Earth and atmosphere travel as one reference frame. No Coriolis effect. Now this gets juggled back and forth, and I've even seen the likes of The Rumpus and George Netanyuk argue about it amongst themselves, adding to the confusion and doublespeak. But if we have an Earth-based Coriolis effect, as demonstrated by, back to the point, the pendulum swinging in a straight line back and forth and the Earth rotating underneath, then the Earth rotates underneath. But it doesn't. As John points out, you could just take off in a helicopter. I don't know what stadium you said would just come along. But yeah, you could catch a football game because the Earth rotates underneath your drone or helicopter. Well, no, it doesn't. You can hover and nothing happens. Same applies to the airtime. Nobody's fighting 1,000-mile-an-hour Earth turning underneath at the equator. That simply doesn't happen. Nobody's having drastically reduced air travel because the continent comes towards them as the Earth rotates underneath. So they need to double speak this into obscurity by mixing up the two things. One reference frame, no Coriolis effect. Well, if the Earth and atmosphere travel as one, no Coriolis effect. Or, as Neil deGrasse Tyson asserts, two reference frame. The Earth rotates underneath, other than the fact it doesn't, and you don't see it in air travel or planes or drones or anything that you would expect it to because it's got a much longer time in the air. I'm done. Anybody else got anything to add?
That's very well said. And listen, Flat Earth, this is an easy one because in the past 4 years, I have yet to hear a single ball-tard know what the Coriolis effect actually is, right? It's toilet water spinning, down in New Zealand versus Boston, or it's hurricanes. We already went over this. How can hurricanes be an example of the Coriolis effect when the Coriolis effect is an apparent deflection? You see, clouds don't apparently deflect. This argument is so easily pummeled that this is actually all jokes. All this is jokes peddled by retards. All these arguments are. That's it. That's all I got.
Cool. Where do you want to pick up your presentation again?
Is Paula done? Does she want to comment on that, or can we move to the last one?
No, I'm done from that.
Okay. Yeah, let's move to the last one. Let me know what's up.
Yeah, you're up.
Yeah, I added this at the end of the presentation. I wanted to play the Neil deGrasse Tyson video where he said that stuff is flat, right? In regards to the Felix Baumgartner jump, but I'm not going to take a chance here. Not these days. You'll get copyright strikes. So we don't have to worry about it. I think most people know and have seen that video where he's talking about this, right? So let's I don't even want to say critically think. Let's just entertain this for a second. So no observable curvature at 128,000 feet. That's how high Felix Baumgartner was. Yet you bozos claim there is observable curvature standing on the ground. Clowney, etc. He's not the only bozo. Does this make any sense? I mean, just on its surface. No pun intended. Nah, it doesn't. This is one of the more belly-laughing, slap-in-the-face contradictions out there. Is your clinical level Dunning-Kruger so virulent that you think even people that have trouble fogging a mirror don't see and recognize these things? This thing and these things we went over. Are you that delusional? I mean, they see it. And they're laughing at you guys. But that's all right. Continue on. We need jokes. You see, you clowns feebly try to distance yourselves from the astrophysicist Neil Smoking deGrasse Tyson, but that dog doesn't hunt here. It's not hunting here. He is unquestionably and unequivocally a spokesman / priest that is a scientist, your scientist, right? For your ball-tard spinning space monkey religion. So there's no throwing him under the bus, okay? Clown shows. Thanks for your ear. Have a nice day.
Is that the full presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
And
cool.
by the way, somebody's posting allegedly John's address in the chat. Doxing.
Unreal. Naughty trolls.
That's another tell. That's all right. Post my address, man. I don't have a problem with it. Come on down and see me. I don't have a problem with that. We'll have a barbecue.
I've actually, I think I might have that clip. So, Red Pill Philosophy, shout out to you. I think he sticks it on in a very brief manner, so I'll just play it out.
That stuff is flat!
There you go. That's as much as I'm prepared to risk.
Yeah, it's not worth it, man. Yeah, so as you can see, these arguments, incoherent second graders are laughing at these, and the people that are perpetuating these, they think they're clever. It's laughable to me. I don't know, man. You explain it to me. There's some serious friggin' F72 code nonsense going on in here.
What's F72 code?
It's an ICD-10 F72 code. It's clinical severe mental retardation diagnosis.
Okay. Well, there is actually a link to... I've opened up a normal Hangout rather than a Discord server this time because we've had a few technical issues. Hopefully we'll get Betty back to talk to us. But in the meantime, if you did want to join and challenge anything that we said, I know there's been very vocal chat participants, but there is a link in the info box. If you were there at the beginning of the show, you might have to refresh your page to get that link. But feel free to join the panel. I'll introduce you. Hopefully there'll be no rumpusing, as I can't keep everyone in check in a hangout, unlike Discord. So hopefully it won't descend into chaos in the hangout room. But if you do want to join, feel free. The link is now available to do so. Good presentation, John. Thank you very much indeed. Hopefully we smashed quite a few ball-tarred arguments in that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And they're, you know, like I said, they're pretty prevalent. We hear these every day, right? They're on the different channels. People are spouting these again. And like we said, it's like a never-ending Tourette's feedback loop. They get pummeled and then they go away for a while and then they spin back up again, right? They're just parroting these things. No one's done any due diligence or scrutiny. None of the Baltards have. But the flat earthers should. Now, this isn't copyrighted stuff, people. Copy these arguments, go through them. If it doesn't, you know, come through to you the first time, go through them a number of times till you get it, and you can use them. I have no problem. That's why we do these. Thanks.
I went to pick up a clip from Red Pill Philosophy, and it's actually a debate with me, with Bob the Science Guy. So shout out to Red Pill Philosophy. The clip I just got that stuff is flat from was his channel, and it's actually me on it. So I'll spam that link a few more times. Big shout out to Red Pill Philosophy. Are you there, Paula?
Yep.
So that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed smashing some of the old globe-tarred arguments. As you've gone through your progression in Flat Earth, would you say that there's been any revelations, arguments like I described with the North and South Hemisphere rotation argument that sort of kept you thinking until recently, or has it always been reasonably clear for you?
There's always questions that come up now and then. It's like, okay, I have to think about it a little bit, but then it's usually pretty obvious at the end, you know, that either it's a fallacy or it's a non-understanding of how optics works or failure to observe accurately or whatever it is. It almost always, you know, is pretty clear in a short time afterwards. So I can't think of anything off the top of my head in particular. Star trails don't bother me. Luminaries movements don't bother me. It's another, you know, as you guys have pointed out, an apples to oranges comparison, because you can't judge the shape of the floor by the ceiling. But all the same things you guys, you know, this whole presentation have been, there's been nothing new, I don't think, really in 4 years that I can think of. I mean, they will try to have little side issues like the Coriolis came up later, I think. I don't think that was an original, objection that the ball earthers would try to use. But I really can't think of anything major that has been a surprise. I wouldn't call anything a surprise, really. Just excuses.
Fair enough. We'll just see if we've got Betty back. If not, we've got Kosho in the hangout, so we'll see if we can get some opinions from him. Are you there with us, Betty?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, took a while.
No worries. It's just
Unmute button.
You were struggling away with Discord throughout the show.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a test server and it works there. It just doesn't work in my own server, so it's something weird, and it must be having to do with some code or something that I don't understand. So it's beyond me for now. So I can't really fix it.
Well, over the next week or so, I'm hoping to use it a little bit more, because I was quite stressed about using it in the first instance, and I thought it was me today. So you know, it was quite a stressful start as a result, but. You know, I'm relieved
and then it
that
ends
it's
up
not.
to be me, huh?
Yeah, well, I'm relieved that it wasn't me, but you know, it's one of those things that I think it is still a good plan. I don't want you to be disheartened by it. I think it's a good plan to use Discord.
I am
it's
a little,
useful.
to be honest, because...
Well, don't be. I know we'll get it sorted, and I know it's a good platform. I've only had a fiddle with it, but I'm hoping to be in there a bit more throughout the week, so that, you know, I can get more accustomed to it, and I'm not, you know, terrified to be broadcasting it. But yeah, I'm sure we'll persevere. Your Discord server's coming along nicely. Give it a plug. That's the main reason for me having this little preamble.
Okay, yeah. Well, I have a Discord server where everybody's welcome. Flat Earthers and Globers. at the moment there are more Globers active in the server than flat earthers, so I'd rather have more flat earthers also interacting with people. So everybody's welcome, and I will have a Discord link under the video on BALLBUSTERS. So if anyone wants to join, then they are able to join.
I'll make sure that link's available once the video's been rendered. Okay, so
Yep.
we've got a couple of people. Hopefully we can get one at a time from the Hangout. So we've got Kosho with us first. So I'll raise the mic on the Hangout, see if I can get a hello from you, Kosho. How you doing?
How you doing? I see. How's everybody doing? I see Rumpus is here as well, so I probably won't speak long because he'll be able to elaborate on whatever it is I try to correct you guys on. It seems like you guys went over Foucault's pendulum and Coriolis, but have very little understanding of it, which was surprising because QE was pretty confident in the way he sounded. I was curious what you said about the flight from New York to LA. It would be like 1.5 hours or something like that because if Coriolis was correct. Did I hear that correct?
What's your
Hello?
question? What's your question?
QE, yeah, you said something from New York to LA. You could see a Dodgers game. It would take you an hour and a half to get there if Foucault was correct.
It's from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure where you got that calculation from, or if you understood that Coriolis doesn't work the same way.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
it's simple math. You know,
Okay.
distance equals rate times time. You know that's where I got it from.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you understand that Foucault's pendulum and Coriolis works only on ballistics. It doesn't work the same way when you have
It works
powered
only on
flight or something
ballistics.
like that.
Well, I'm a subject matter expert in that area. I'm an expert infantryman, and you're a clown, right?
Okay, so the claim is that it only works on ballistics. So I don't know if we want to go around the panel and actually address that. Happy to start if no one else, maybe Paula.
What is he saying? Wait a second. Is he saying that the Coriolis effect only works on ballistics?
I'll just get some clarity from him. I'm pretty sure that's what you're saying, right, Kosho?
No. That's not exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that it doesn't work the same way if it's not a ballistic. On a ballistic, that'd be the only effect you'd see. Whereas on something like a plane, which would still be slightly affected by Coriolis, it wouldn't be something that you would expect to see because it's so much more influenced by everything else the plane is doing.
Wrong.
So you're saying that ballistics show a severe effect, whereas you'd only see a small effect on a plane. That's his claim. So for some reason we have differing amounts that the Earth turns underneath in these two reference frames. No, if the Earth rotates underneath a bullet, then the Earth rotates underneath a plane at the same rate.
Yes, but a plane corrects itself. The plane has a course which heads on.
Can we just round this out with Kosher, then we'll come to you, Rumpus, no worries. So
sure, like I said, I can't be here long, that's why I said I would do it. But yeah, exactly. So what you're saying is that Coriolis is the Earth rotating beneath the bullet or the airplane or the helicopter, but that's not what Coriolis is. It's the changing of reference frames. So it's really changing the speed. So if the Earth is spinning beneath you at one speed and you're changing to a position where the Earth is spinning beneath you at a different speed, that's what would cause a Coriolis, not just the fact that it's rotating beneath you.
So according to Kosho, the Earth rotating beneath us, that would be two reference frames, regardless of his attempt to make it seem more complicated than it is. If the Earth rotates underneath a bullet, then the Earth rotates underneath a plane. Now, if you're alleging that we'd have differing rotation rates, then yeah, we'd have planes fighting 1,000-mile-an-hour spin at the equator if the Earth rotates underneath. But it doesn't, and we don't see that effect. Not to a minor effect, not to any effect, not ever. It doesn't happen.
This is the last thing I can say before I have to go, but yeah, so the difference obviously between a plane and a bullet is a bullet is only influenced by the power you gave it when you shot it. After that, it's on its own, and it's no longer experiencing or being able to control its flight. Whereas a plane is constantly being controlled by the flyer, whether it's a bird, a plane, anything with a powered flight. You can make corrections for every little thing that's going on, and so you're not going to experience
that's irrelevant. That's
So,
irrelevant.
yeah.
That
Yeah,
has
well,
nothing
it's
to
not-
do with
it's
the
not-
argument. We're
I don't
going
know.
straight flight.
I don't know if I'd say it's irrelevant. I think it actually backs up our argument. So yes, if you can experience the Earth rotating underneath a bullet with a very limited hang time, then you'd see the Earth rotating underneath a plane with a massively extended hang time. The effect would be compounded. You would see it more. So, yeah, that doesn't really serve any purpose in terms of demonstrating this second reference frame that we never ever experience by saying that, oh, we only experience it with a very short hang time. Well, that makes no sense. Absolutely none whatsoever. So,
yeah, that's counterintuitive because the bullet is moving very fast and isn't in the air very long at all. So the Earth has to be spinning at some unimaginable speed in order for it to have any effect on that bullet because of the short time it's in the air. That's counterintuitive at best.
well, hopefully we've covered Kosho's question. He said he hadn't got very much time. We've also got the Rumpus in. How you doing, Rumpus?
I'm all right.
How
Yeah,
can
you don't
we
understand
help?
the Coriolis effect. You don't understand. I mean, the idea that QE thinks that you would be able to track on a rotating Earth, that you would get closer, a shorter flight time to something equally far away, going east and west, suggests he's never been on a train and hasn't noticed that when you're in a train, you pour yourself a cup of coffee or something.
Oh, come on. Get with your argument and stop with the backhanded crayon munching slights. What's your evidence?
Being on a train. When you're on a train, you don't have to account for the fact you're going along, or on an aeroplane. You don't notice the fact you're going far. For instance, if you run forwards or run backwards, there's no difference. You similarly, on the surface of the Earth...
Okay, hold on. So I just want to get Rumpus's point. He'll just go on and on and on. So according to Rumpus, we've got a plane being equivocated with a train. And the train, which would be like you holding on to a ball, i.e. it's in the first reference frame, the non-inertial reference frame, and then he's equivocating that with a plane, which should be in the second reference frame. So these two things aren't comparable. The train's attached to the Earth, which is alleged to be spinning. So when we're talking about the Earth rotating underneath, it makes absolute sense, and is just an equivocation.
Ask him to define the Coriolis effect.
Okay, we'll see if we can get him to... He's just talked non-stop. He thinks that he's going to have the mic open on him. Rumpus, if you can shut up long enough to listen to a question. Rumpus, can you listen for a moment? He won't shut up.
I haven't made my point yet. I'm about to say I haven't made my point yet.
Sorry, Rumpus.
Yes, so when you're on the surface of the Earth...
Rumpus.
I haven't made my point yet. No, I'm still being
You're not the host of the show. You're a guest here to ask any questions.
You're
not here to make points.
I haven't made my question yet.
I've got a question for you, Rumpus. You can either listen to my question as the host of the show...
I haven't made my point yet. I haven't made my point
You're not
yet.
here to make points. You're here to ask questions.
Okay, my question. I haven't made my question.
We've got a question for you. What is the Coriolis effect?
I haven't made my question yet. I
made your question. What is the Coriolis effect, Rumpus?
I haven't been able to finish my question to QE yet.
I don't care. I'm asking you a question.
Well, I do care. I haven't been able to make my point yet.
I don't care.
Here. So
what is the Coriolis effect, Rumpus?
What
is the Coriolis effect, Rumpus?
I'll deal that in 2 seconds after I make my point to QE, which is that if he understands that you pick up the velocity of a train when you're on a train, similarly an aeroplane picks up the velocity of the surface of the Earth when it leaves the Earth's surface. So as far as it's concerned, it doesn't make any difference which way it goes, left or right or east or west. It will take exactly the same time because it's got that one surface of the equator. It's got that
thank you. You said you'd be 2 seconds. Yeah, he's going on and on and on. Thank you. So according to you, they're in the same reference frame.
Exactly.
Well, no, they're not actually, because the airplane has its own velocity with respect to the Earth's surface, but it starts off with that 1,038, whatever it is, miles per hour on the equator.
So does the train.
And any velocity it then acquires.
Yeah, so does the train.
To that.
So does the train. So, you're claiming one reference frame. So let's shut him up, because he won't shut up of his own volition. He'll jabber on and on. So what he's saying is, as the plane takes off, it continues at the same velocity as the Earth rotating underneath. Well, that's one reference frame. So this is where they try and double speak the shit out of the subject and assert that we've only got one reference frame.
Let's take an example. So we have the Charlotte, North Carolina flight. It's going to travel west towards Los Angeles. Okay. But the runway is facing west, right? So it takes off 150, 180 mile an hour, right? Is Rumpus saying that because of the conservation of momentum, that the plane must, stay in suspended animation so it can overcome that spin in the other direction? You clown.
Yeah, his example only works if he's traveling west. Is that right?
His example doesn't work. It's nonsense. He's got one reference frame. That's all he's saying in his gibberish. When you get down to it, he's talking about one reference frame. That's it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll see if I can open the mic on him and get any other questions that he may have.
No, we need him to answer, what is the Coriolis effect?
He'll just say that his point hasn't been made, and he'll try and distract away from any questions we have for him if I open the mic. So what do you want me to do?
And if he does, then just switch over to my screen, and I don't even know why we're talking to him in the first place, because remember this.
Let's have a look.
Tell me when it's up.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, why are we even talking to him when he's saying that air is not the atmosphere? See, this is him. Of course, he's more an utter, this is him. He said 2.5 years ago, air is not the atmosphere. I'm asking the question here. Why are we talking to him?
Oh, well, the panel's open. If anybody else wants to join, they're more than welcome to.
Okay. I just wanted to put that out there.
Fair enough. Is there maybe any other questions from you, Rumpus?
Do you understand what relative velocity is, QE?
You said you'd answer my question about what the
Coriolis
Coriolis
effect was. If you did
understand
that, then you would understand
Rumpus,
why you would expect to take exactly
you asked
the
a
same
question and then
length on
didn't
an aeroplane
pause.
journey.
Rumpus, are you a
going east or
liar?
west.
You said that you would answer my question in 2 seconds.
Okay, right, so what's your question?
What is the Coriolis effect, Rumpus?
Coriolis effect is a force that's applied to you as a result of your velocity in that reference frame. It's an apparent force and causes you to accelerate with respect to the reference frame for which you have a velocity with regard to it. I can give you the formula if you like. So that means you have an apparent acceleration with regard to the reference frame. And it's something that clearly QE doesn't understand. He doesn't understand what the formula. I bet he doesn't have the formula for it.
Acceleration.
Come on, QE, tell us what the formula for the Coriolis force is.
Hey, tell us about it. We want to know what apparent acceleration is. Can you? I need a cite. Can you cite a source for that, please?
Okay, I'll tell you. If I decide to measure,
no. I want a cite, source cited, not you telling me. Because you already said air is not the atmosphere. We're not listening to anything you say.
Air is a component of the atmosphere, you moron. Do you not understand the collection of air? We give a name to the collection of air.
Did you call me a moron?
The atmosphere.
He did. And now
he calls me a moron, and he says the air is not the atmosphere.
Do you not understand that the collection of air? If you have air in a bottle, QE, we call that air. But when it's around the Earth,
Okay, well, that's enough of Rumpus. I've had enough of him now. Okay, thank you very much. Air is not the atmosphere. Very good. So we've been joined by Greg. How you doing, Greg? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Very well. What can we do you for?
Oh, I was just going to add, I'm actually working on a presentation of Coriolis, and I don't know if Rumpus is not aware, but it would not work the way he's describing it on a ball or a plane.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah. Did you have a question in that regard, or about anything we've put forth? In fact.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that.
Hey, let's go ahead and define the Coriolis effect. Let's go ahead and take it from physics about. Are you sharing my screen? Is my screen up?
It is.
The Coriolis effect, also called the Coriolis force, is defined as the apparent deflection of objects, such as airplanes, wind, missiles, and ocean currents, moving in a straight path relative to the Earth's surface. The apparent portion of the Coriolis effect's definition is also important to take into consideration. This means that from the object in the air i.e. an aeroplane, the Earth can be seen rotating slowly below it. From the Earth's surface, the same object appears to curve off its course. The object is not actually moving off its course, but this just appears to be happening because the Earth's surface is rotating beneath the object. The main cause of the Coriolis effect is the Earth's rotation. As the Earth spins in a counterclockwise direction on its axis, anything flying or flowing a long distance above its surface is deflected. This occurs because as something moves freely above the Earth's surface, the Earth is moving east under the object at a faster speed. So the bozos that say it doesn't affect airplanes because of the controls or the wings, you might as well give me the latrine colors. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the argument. As long as they're flying straight and they're not attached to the Earth, not tethered, then the Coriolis effect must exist. Thanks.
So we've got a couple of other guests. I think Chocolate Saying was in first. How you doing, Chocolate Saying?
Hello. What's up,
Hello.
guys? And ladies.
Did you have something to add in anything in regards to anything that we've discussed tonight?
No, I mean, you know where I stand. I just laughed at all this globe nonsense. So yeah.
No, fair enough. We'll probably have a chat with you in the after show, but we've also got another guest. So, Cock of something or other. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on? It's me, Kosho, again.
Hello again. Feel free to ask anything.
I jumped
again.
on a different account because I think
No
someone booted me. It was weird.
Go ahead, Kosho.
No, yeah, again, I was reading what QE just was read in his description about the definition of Foucault, or sorry, of Coriolis, and he put in parentheses airplanes also. I'm not sure if that was actually the definition or not.
No, I didn't put it. I didn't put it in there. It's part of the definition. It's part of the citation. If you'd understand, if you graduated high school, brackets mean that I've added something to emphasize. Parentheses, like the ones that are, go ahead and pull up the screen. You see these parentheses? Clown show. They're part of the citation. I didn't mess with this.
Okay, actually, airplanes wasn't in parentheses right there. Oh, there it is below that. Either way, you said you were an expert on ballistics.
I'm a subject matter expert on the Coriolis effect along with ballistics.
There
is no Coriolis.
Well, that's
let me
true.
just say
I find
this.
it
There
hard to
is
believe
no
that you don't
Coriolis
understand.
effect.
Hold on, just one at a time. Ask your question,
Yeah.
Kosho.
Go ahead.
I just don't understand where's the confusion then on why it affects ballistics differently than powered flight.
It doesn't affect ballistics differently. There is no effect. I have, in 20 years, I've personally made shots, sniper shots, from 13 to 1,500 meters away. Personally, I trained with the snipers. I was in combat arms. I was in recon for half of my career. The Coriolis effect wasn't even brought up, much less applied. So you're talking out your ass, son.
You happen to know, because you said you're an expert, what the error would be on a shot that distance?
There is no error because there is no Coriolis effect.
Yeah, I don't think this has been made clear. So, the Earth does not rotate underneath anything, ever. It never happens. Various different gadgets, like gyroscopes and pendulums, are asserted to demonstrate that the Earth rotates underneath, and occasionally a high priest of wizardry, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, will say that a field goal has been made because the Earth rotated underneath. So it's definitely the case that it's an assertion that the Earth rotates underneath. It just doesn't. We haven't heard much from you, Betty.
Yeah, I've been silent. Yeah, well, I have nothing too much to say about this. I think it's self-explanatory. I mean, it was explained very well, and I don't understand why people see don't see that that you have these two different reference frames, and you have to. It's so easy to see, and nobody takes into account when they shoot a bullet, or even if you play tennis, you don't even you take account the wind, but not anything else. I mean, not that the earth would turn underneath you. So everybody knows that if you take a helicopter up and just hover, that you won't end up somewhere else just without any further action. So I don't see what the fuss is about, but they need it, I think, to work. So.
And don't projectiles like bullets and missiles, well, not necessarily missiles, but projectiles spin? Isn't it I don't know much about firearms, but I have the impression that there's a spiral inside the barrel to help so it goes straighter. If something is spinning one direction the whole time it's in the air, that can influence, just like a gyroscope would, that it might want to veer one way or another, but it's going so fast it doesn't matter, as far as my understanding. But wind, is a thing, and the distance to the target, you aim up a little bit because it's eventually going to slow down and fall if it's really far away. But I never hear them bring that up. It's just strictly in a perfect, windless, perfectly sighted firearm that has no variables whatsoever, no shake at all from the person. I mean, the good snipers don't, they hone that skill, so that's very, very minimized, but they never bring it up. The critics never bring it up. They're just thinking of it the way they think of curvature calculators. It's orthographic. It's idealized. And so they think the only factor they have to enter is their alleged Earth spin, and that somehow people have to account for that when all they're accounting for, if anything, is wind and distance, as far as I understand.
Surprised we've not got any other subjects that we've covered. I mean, we've covered the not actual size of the CERN and the Earth curve calculator and all sorts of other stuff. So we have had a new guest join, and we'll see if we've got any related questions from our new guest, and then if not, we'll push this into the after show. So
I have a related question.
Glat, how you doing? Can you hear us, Glat?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can. What was your question?
Okay, super. My question is simple. I'm a simpleton, and this is my first time being on any kind of show like this, but I've been watching for a long time. You guys are great. My question is for Rumpus, Kosho, these kinds of folks. How is it that you still belligerently want to go against the grain? Because obviously it's observably flat. Like at the very least, that's what we know is, there's no rotation, there's no R value. Like we can't distance to the sun. That shit's laughable. All that stuff's funny to me. So how is it that Rumpus and Kosho and folks like that, they seem like they're kind of, smart-ish, right? A little bit smart. How is it, like for instance, my stepbrother, smartest dude I know, still thinks it's a ball, just can't get over it. And I can't seem to prove it to him. And we argue violently about it. So anyway, I guess my question is, what's your elevator speech for the globe, Rumpus or Kosho? You guys, what's going on? What's wrong with your mind?
Probably a question that will get answered in the after show. Is there anything you guys want to add? Maybe I'll just say one word to answer that. Brainwashing. Anything you guys want to add? If not, we'll round out the live show, and this will get discussed in the after show.
Indoctrination, mind control, those terms.
Yeah, normalcy bias.
John?
That should be it.
And religion, of course.
For the overall theme of the BALLBUSTERS show tonight, is there any closing remarks? And then I'll round out the live show, and we'll have some chat with the people in the hangout afterwards. Any closing remarks? Don't all go at once.
No, not really.
Yeah, one. Discord works again.
Right at the end. Isn't that sod's law?
Sorry.
I think what I'm looking for from you, John, at this point is kind of a word to the flat earthers, and continuing a theme of Sleeping Warrior. Shout out to Anthony, because he's sort of setting flat earthers straight at the moment, and in the best of intentions. We're trying to progress these arguments. So at the beginning of this show, you kind of said, well, I'm going to be on the case of the pretender clowns, if you like, that we have in the flat Earth. I'm hoping you'll echo that, and then I'll round out the live show.
Yeah, it's just like I was saying. People ask, why isn't the flat Earth moving forward in giant steps? Well, the reason why is flat earthers, and it's some of the pretender clown flat earthers. I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but there's a big difference between, being a flat earther and supporting others and, doing your homework. But it doesn't appear, these people are out here that haven't done their homework, and they want to get into it with these ballers, even though the ballers' arguments are retarded. They still can't deal with the arguments that we had already dealt with back in 2015. So for every step we take forward, we have to take 20 steps back, because you just train wrecked us, because they don't realize that they're representing us, right? So, it's not about me. It's not about Nathan. It's not about any person, right? It's about the truth, the nature of our reality, right? So take it seriously. We still want to hear you. You could join. I don't care. I'm not trying to censor you. Just don't go on and make a horse's ass out of yourself with a baller if you don't know what you're doing, because I'm going to find you. I am. I'm going to find you and make an example out of you. Okay? If you want to play that game. I'm tired of it. I've been saying it for about 3 months now. You guys still haven't got it. No problem. I'm going to search you out, and I'm going to make you a star. Thanks.
And with that, I'm going to say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in. I think there's a Flat AF super chat right at the end. Thank you very much. He says, can you say brainwashing? Indeed. But yes, first and foremost, a massive thank you to all of you in the live audience for tuning in, smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Of course, a massive thank you to all of the Ballbusters team. That's Paula, Betty, and Quantum Eraser for making this Ballbusters possible. Last but by no means least, a massive thank you to all of you in the Google Hangouts for making the interactive part of this live show possible. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next Ballbusters.